There are two spellings of principle. Principle, spelled L-E, is like I'm an honest person. That is a principle I have. Like it's like a belief. Principal is Mr. Flynn, because he's your pal. And that's how our teachers told us when I was younger. But also, that's the spelling for money. So financial principle is the same spelling as the head of the school. Alex?
So with like compound or simple, is it like all add to your bank account like at the end of the year?
Yeah, when you go to withdraw them. Now again, it depends on how the account is set up. If you're borrowing, if you're giving money. Like back when I was a kid, interest rates were probably close to 5%. Now, even if you got 3.5, that'd be crazy high. Interest rates are at like 1 right now. Like if you're lucky. So now, if we're talking about a credit card that like you swipe and you pay interest on, who wants to make a guess of what interest rate on a credit card is? Charlie?
25%. No.
Avi?
Never mind.
Henry?
On a credit card, I would guess it's about 10% non-compound.
Simon?
5%.
There?
1, 2, 3%.
Mike?
23.5%.
Hazel?
100%. Oh,
That'd be really, really high.
that would suck. I'm 0%.
On a standard credit card, if you just like want one and say, can I have one? And they're like, okay, sure, here you go. Like they're not trying to get your business. I just opened one for my vet bills, right? I opened a vet specific credit card. Interest rate on that, if I don't pay it back in time, 29%. 29%. That's every $100 you spend, that's 29 extra dollars.
Whoa.
So does it start to make sense why credit card debt is an issue in America? If you charge $5,000 and think, oh, I'll pay it back, and then you lose your job, and you're getting charged 25% interest, or even worse than that, because I have good credit. When people talk about their credit score, I have great credit. And I still would have to pay 29% interest on this credit card, even though I have great credit. Now, if I shop around and try to get a really good credit card, I might be able to get like 15%. I might be able to like shop it around and get it down. But this card that I got has no interest charged if you pay it back in a certain amount of time. So I'm going to pay it back in that certain amount of time and never actually pay interest. Bobby?
Oh, is that why people pay cash?
That's why people pay in cash. Yep. Or a debit card is not a credit card. Debit means I have money in the bank. It's like a gift card, essentially. You've got money on something, you swipe it, and the money gets pulled.
But why don't like people just use debit cards instead of using credit cards?
I don't have $3,000 just sitting in my bank right now to pay for my dog's surgery, so I have to put it on a credit card.
Also, so you don't have to.
Yeah.
Also, so you get a better credit score.
Yeah, it does improve your credit score, and some people get points on credit cards, like depending on the card that you have.
Yeah.
So the card I just got doesn't have points because it has interest free. Yeah. But if I wanted a card with points, I'd probably be paying interest.
Okay.
And like, so my mother-in-law puts things on a credit card and then just pays them off at the end of the month to get the points. Because if you pay it off before interest hits, you don't pay interest.
Yeah.
Compound interest is completely different when we look at the formula. So first we're going to play with it before we look at the formula. So Miss Hartley won the lottery. Problem is you got to play the lottery to win the lottery. So she wins $20,000. Because a lot of people are like, I want to win the lottery. Well, you got to go buy a ticket. So she spends half of it immediately, buys a new car or something, whatever. Invests the other half for retirement. So she chooses a bank account with 5% interest. She's a teacher. She got a really good interest rate somehow. And she calculated after 10 years, she should have $1,500. Because 5% of $10,000, right? 5%. Remember, guys, when we talk about rates, we have to put it in rate form. So it'd be 0.05
She's not right.
times $10,000. You stop shouting things out there. She is right. She should be getting
$50 a year.
that. This would be annually, right? You're supposed to have a calculator. Punch this in.
No, it's 500.
It is 500 if you don't believe me, but some people are shouting out other answers. But that's each year. So if she's doing this for 10 years, then times 10, that's our 5,000. That's how she computes. She should have $15,000. I mean, 10 years is a while to leave your money in the bank. Now, the one way these days you might be able to get interest close to that, if you get a certificate of deposit, which means you cannot touch your money. It has to stay there. Or you pay a penalty, however long you sign for. You can get a 1-year CD, 5-year CD, 10-year. Like, your certificate of deposit is going to be better the longer you agree to. Because then the bank uses your money to do other stuff with.
Oh, and then it'll pay you back.
Now, oddly enough, the bankers like actually miss your balance will be $16,289. She's like, all right, well, it's better, so I'm just not going to ask any questions. But then she starts thinking, oh, that's because I'm not getting simple interest. I'm getting compound interest. So, like any good teacher would do, Miss Hartley sets up a table. Right? I'm not asking you to write this down yet, but let's look at this. In simple interest, we would add $500 every year, which then means after 5 years, we'd have $2,500, another $2,500, another $2,500, and we keep doing the same thing every 5 years. In compound, she asks the banker to compute out this table. Guys, here's the crazy thing. Same starting amount. Same starting amount. There's no trickery happening here. So this, when we talk about the unfairness of wealth inequality, imagine your family, your great-great-great-grandfather invented the pop tab, the thing that opens every soda can, right? Just imagine with me, because this is real, like, friend of mine, this is his situation. Your great-great-great-grandfather invented the pop tab. Every pop tab that goes on a can, you get like a penny. Let's just imagine. It's royalties. If you don't know what a royalty is where you thought up something, you invented something, and you patent it, and you say, anybody who wants to use this thing I designed owes me. Anyone. Until you sell your patent for lots and lots of money. So, while your great-great-great-grandfather is alive and you're not, he's making money, right? He invented this thing, he's making money. He's smart. He puts it in the bank. 100 years later, when you come along, right, like great-great-great-grandfather, that money's been sitting in a bank, and it's been making interest. You can now live off that interest and never, ever touch this because you've already made thousands and thousands of dollars off the interest. No joke. I have a friend from college. That's his situation. He does not have to work. He lives off a trust fund, and a trust fund is money made from interest. It's money made off of the money that you have.
What did his grandpa invent?
There. The pop tab. I'm not joking.
Really?
Yes.
Awesome.
I'm not sure if he still owns it or not. Avi?
And then on top of that, if it was from like 100 years ago, you have inflation. Wouldn't you make even more money?
You make even more.
Yeah, because
less.
isn't it like just keep on depositing money every single month?
But because of inflation, you make more.
No, because money is worth
No,
less over
because it's
time.
worth
That's what
less.
inflation is.
Well,
That's a whole argument we don't need to get into right now about. So college is a really fun time when you get to meet new people and you have to have your BS detector out, which, bullcrap detector. So anytime somebody would tell us something, back in 2007, it wasn't as easy to Google things. Now it is. My buddy Devin phrase, this is, I forget if it's great or great. Actually, it's probably not even that many greats because it wasn't that long ago. But for the story, it's better if I make it a long time ago. But honestly, we haven't had aluminum cans for that long. Before then, they were tin or steel, and you had to, use a church key, this thing that would poke a hole in the top of it to get your liquid or soup or whatever. So, you'd get a can of Coke, and you have to like literally there'd be a thing attached to the machine that you'd stab a hole into the top of the can. Until Ermal Fraze invented the pop top. Literally, and this is my buddy Devin's like great-great-grandfather or great-grandfather, whatever, and he now lives on that money. Because that's how interest works. You can make money off of money. Right?
Is he like living a luxury life?
No, because I mean it's not like a crazy amount of money, but if he is sensible and he doesn't blow his money on stupid stuff, he'll be okay. He doesn't need to. Unless he does something stupid with his money. So like he travels around. He's really big into this game called Go, and he's actually the Ohio ambassador for Go, and actually he does international stuff as well. It's like over the summer he was traveling in a couple other countries to play in tournaments and things. But he doesn't he doesn't drive a Lamborghini or anything stupid like that. Like he drives a really sensible car, doesn't cost very much. Like he owns a couple properties that he makes money off of because he charges people rent. So, like he's investing that money. The dumbest thing you can do with money is spend it. The dumbest thing you can do with money is spend it. Now, if you spend it on like a car, a house, something that you could later sell, that's an investment. A house is a better investment than a car because cars depreciate. Houses, not really. The housing market just kind of ebbs and flows. Hazel?
What if I spend my money on bubble tea?
That is expendable. You have spent your money. It is gone. I don't think you could sell that again. Simon? Hey, I called on Simon and everybody started talking. That was odd.
Has anyone ever recognized him? Or like, oh, are you the son of Emil Fraze, my
No,
favorite
and it's
wrestler
Ermal.
of all time?
No. It's Ermal. All right. So seriously, we didn't believe him until we like looked it up, and he's like, "Yeah, see." Yeah.
You should tell your friends you should get a job and donate the money somewhere.
He does. He does do a lot of forward stuff. He actually had started a school for a few years that was for kids that go to homeschool that don't want to go to homeschool all the time. Like they want to actually get together with other students and have like a school to go to. So he's done some really cool stuff. I mean, it is not.
So, do you, what else did the granddad do? Anything else important?
I'm not sure. You can dig into it if you want. Ermal Fraze.
Stop getting into this. You should continue with that.
Hey-o, there it is. So Mariana has a really nice grandpa. Maybe not as nice as Ermal Fraze, giving you all the money that you need in a trust fund, but he gave her $500. So, congrats. You graduated. Sorry, no, you were born. Congrats, you were born. And it pays 5% compounding. Write this down. $500. $500. 5% compound. Now, this is why you need a calculator. Now, if we were to write this work out, the long way of doing it is to write out 0.05 times my 500, find the interest amount, which is 25, and then add it to the previous amount. But there's a quicker way, Alex.
Okay, just to use exponent.
What? Not yet.
Wait, what isn't it?
You're too far ahead of me. First, we need to figure out what to multiply by. Because if you start using exponents multiplying by this, it's going to get real funky. Charlie?
You have to make sure you have a 1 in the rate,
Why?
because if it's a 0, then because the 1 is the original value.
If I just do 0.05, this is just the interest. So if I make this a 1.05, the 1 multiplying by 1 just gets you the same thing back, right? So that 1 will get me 525. So if we multiply by 1.05, we not only have the original from the 1, but we have the interest from the 0.05. Now is where Alex wants to talk about exponents, because if we're going to multiply by 1.05 again and again and again and again, Alex, help me from stopping saying and again and again.
Well, exponents, it just automatically does that. It just
Like you don't have to multiply it and then find the number and then multiply that number. Because
So,
it just keeps on multiplying.
for X amount of years, what would I have written here? Write down X years. Your balance, which is the amount you have, will equal 500 times 1.05 to the power of X. So remember yesterday when we talked about the difference between a quadratic and an exponential? Is this quadratic or exponential? Charlie?
This is exponential.
Because the X is in the exponent, it's exponential. So let's play this out. I'm 30, right? So let's say that she, from the time that she was born, waited till now to get that money. Well, what does this come out to be if X is 30? Try it. Do it in your calculator. Remember, the caret is how you do power. This, that is how you bump to the power. So you're going to type in 500 times 1.05, then hit the caret and put 30.
That's a lot of damage.
The carrot?
Over $1 million?
No, you didn't.
Wait, you did that wrong.
That's a lot.
It's like 50,725. What?
That would have been amazing.
Yeah. No, like, that would have been amazing.
Okay, that's a lot of money.
They should have just put in even more than $1. That would make so much money.
What?
They should put in
Wait,
like the
no, not even zero.
wait,
Yeah.
Where did the one come from?
Oh my god, I'm going to
Where did the one come from?
Yo, bring it back. Who can tell Henry where the 1 came from?
the original. What Simon said.
Well, don't just say 2 words. Make sure explain it. Don't just say 2 words. Yeah, whatever.
In order, it makes it so you don't have to add what the other number was before it. So it's the number that you used to have, which you just get the same number and multiplying by 1. But then you also do the interest rate, so you get that number plus whatever the new money made for interest is.
Okay.
So if I go to Desmos and I graph my function, and then I find the intersection point at 30 years, $2,160. But what if this, instead of being 500, was 5,000? We could compute that. Now, would it just be off by a 0? Would it be 21,000?
No, because it's exponential.
Where is it? I can't find the intersection because we're too zoomed out. But yeah, it's crazy.
It's the wrong 21,000. It's a bit more other stuff.
Right? You would have had all the college money you need.
If you invested in me.
Of course, you're probably not
So,
that good of an
I respect your time and I'm trying to go through this lesson quickly. We now are formalizing that instead of, and I gotta make sure that we all understand this because I know some of us do, instead of continually repeating to multiply the same thing over and over and over again, we can now use exponents to do that repetition multiplication. Right? So for 4 years, we're going to multiply 1, 2, 3, and another 1. So we do that 1.05 to the 4th. Or 30 years, we do to the 30th. Now, 5% interest doesn't make it seem that crazy. So let's flip this up a little bit. Let's go into the alternate world of the upside down, right? And I go my credit card, right? Let's say my dog's surgery ends up being $2,500, which is actually not that crazy. I'm real with you guys. That's probably what we're looking at spending on my dog. Hopefully. I mean, he's having surgery right now, literally like today. So if we put that on that credit card and something terrible happens and I can't pay it back and interest happens, and I'm charged 29% interest, and that goes for, let's say, somehow 5 years. Calculate what that comes out to. I'm trying to get you guys to perceive credit card debt and how big of an issue this is for America. What's come out to be?
What the?
What?
Oh gosh.
So guys, now let me make this even worse for you.
Who's getting rich off of this?
The banks. Credit cards don't charge you interest each year. They charge you interest each month.
Wow.
So instead of 5, this would be 60. Now, hold up. You're right. Because I'm going to teach up here, then I'm going to bring it back so we can understand it, right? I'm back here now. Hey, put your calculators down, stop computing. I wish I could hit a pause button on all calculators and pencils in the classroom. Your credit card. This 29% interest is your APY, standing for annual percentage yield. That means the annual rate would be 29, which means if it sits there for a year, it's 29%. So your monthly interest would not actually do 29%, but if it sat there for a year, the annual, you'd actually end up with 29%. So they prorate this. So when you actually do the math, this would be something close to 29 divided by 12, but it's not actually, it's close to that. It's a little awkward. But that's when you do monthly, the interest rate would have to change to the monthly breakdown of that interest. Bobby?
So if you didn't end up paying it off in a year, you'd be a lot of money in debt.
Yeah. And here, I'm not trying to scare, I'm just trying to get you guys to realize why I teach what I teach and why I think middle school math is really important. This is really, really dangerous. And I'm living in that moment right now. So I'm going to put $2,500 on this credit card. And I'm going to have interest free for 18 to 24 months. If I don't pay that back, when you hit that moment, all of the interest that would have happened happens. So they keep track of it the whole time, and if you aren't back at 0, all the interest happens.
Even if you have $1 more.
Yep.
Wow.
So here's what people get trapped into. Even if I only have $100 left, right? Like Liam was saying, even if my balance is really low, I then, because I'm scared of that happening, not me actually, because I'm going to pay this stuff off, right? I'll work 8 jobs if I have to. But then the thing that happens to Americans, you get something in the mail that says, hey, here's another credit card you can have. You can transfer balances from other credit cards onto this credit card. And the person scared of that balance will transfer it to another credit card that is starting its interest immediately. So now I've paid off this credit card over here by just moving it onto this credit card over here. And every time you open a new credit card, your credit score takes a ding. It takes a hit because they know you're opening more credit, you're taking out more debt, and eventually it comes back up. But when I bought my house, my credit dropped by 20 or 30 points. And then as you pay on, like, as you show that you can handle the debt, your credit comes back up to exactly where it was and actually even better. Because the bank now trusts you to handle that debt. Avi?
A couple of questions. If you don't have a good enough credit score, can you not
Yep.
buy a house or get
Yep.
a new credit score?
Or your rate sucks. And I'm just being really direct. Like, I could use fancy line, but no, like, so if I have a bad credit score, like my credit score is about 800, but let's say it's like a 600, which isn't that great, and I go to try to buy my house, the interest I pay on my house right now is 4.125%, and there are that many decimal places, so it's 4 and an eighth, right? That's an eighth. If I went with like a 600 credit score and tried to buy a house, I'd probably be paying 7 or 8% interest. So like, that's where your credit score, it doesn't stop you necessarily, but it changes the parameters of the bank doesn't trust you as much, so they make your rate higher.
So you can so when you open up a credit card after credit card after credit card, do people do that?
It's a really bad idea, but some people do.
And what happens if you don't pay off that
You go into default and they repossess items, or they'll send you to collections, which is when people call you or come to your house or whatever and keep saying hey, you owe these people money, you need to pay these people money, what are you gonna do? Or they can take you to court. They can do what's called garnishing your wages, which is where literally they put a legal injunction, they'd go to Worthington and say, hey, he owes us $10,000, we're taking his paycheck. And I don't have any say in what happens because I made that agreement with whatever bank that was. They get my paycheck now. And every paycheck until I pay them back. Alex?
Well, then how do you pay them back if you don't get money?
They are paying themselves back with my paycheck. They're not having me pay them back. They're taking control of it.
Okay.
But then, if I don't have my paycheck, guess whose house can't get paid for because I don't have my paycheck? My house.
They don't give you a percentage of it?
Depends. I've never had my wages garnished, thankfully, so I don't know how that works exactly. Simon?
Eventually, you would just have everything repossessed after 60 years.
Or you just file for bankruptcy.
What does filing for bankruptcy do?
You essentially tell the banks and everybody else, I have no money, and you literally get rid of everything. You sell everything. You liquidate everything. And whatever money or value they can take of yours, they do, and then you move on. And you start over at nothing. But your credit score takes a huge hit. We're talking your credit score ends up at 300, 400, really bad.
So you would no longer, after these 60 years, have to owe them $100 billion.
Well, after 60 years, I don't know if I'll still be here, but
Yeah, but
Now that 60 that we put up there, that was months when we changed it to computing every month.
I know, but I'm saying if you did it for 60 years,
Yeah.
dodging them, going to.
Oh, you wouldn't be able to get to that far. You if you don't pay within a couple months, they're on your case. Yeah, because there's a minimum payment you have to make. And there's actually now, if you're curious about this stuff, ask your parents to see the stuff they get in the mail. There's a thing on your credit card statement now that says if you only pay the minimum balance, it'll take you until this date to pay off this debt. They do the math for you. The government had to step in and make that happen. They had to tell the banks, you have to do this because you're tricking people. Essentially is what the government said. Okay, yeah?
What happens if you die before
Somebody else has to pay it back.
Whoa.
Yep.
It can
Your
be
next
split
of
up
kin.
between relatives.
Whoever your next of kin is.
But what if you have no loans? You don't have any kids, you don't have any siblings, and your parents are dead?
It goes to your
They
friend.
might end up getting screwed, but I mean, if there's anybody connected to you that they can say this debt is yours now, they transfer the debt. So be careful who you get married to, right? All right, 2 more, and then we got to move on. Hazel.
Can you ever have a credit score of 0? What happens if you have?
I'm not sure. Actually, yeah, you all probably have a credit score of 0 right now because it just doesn't exist. Because you don't have any credit.
When you open up a
Is it possible that a person with an actual
You would need to Google that. I'm not an expert on credit scores. Google it if you're interested. Henry. Henry, then we got to move on.
What if you?
You guys
So
like
what
this.
is the worst possible thing that can happen here?
we all die. I mean, are you just speaking generally? Like, I think that's probably the worst possible thing that could happen.
If you go into credit debt, and if you do have to declare bankruptcy, do you basically, if you declare bankruptcy, you start over as if you had just gotten out of college and don't own anything?
Pretty much. I was listening to a podcast earlier where somebody, to paraphrase what happened, they were in a big old court battle and they ended up losing. And normally when you lose the court battle, you then have to pay the legal fees of all the lawyers and everything. And they had $250,000 of legal fees to pay back. $250,000. Right? They couldn't. This person was in the military. They garnished their wages from the Air Force because the Air Force was like still giving them paychecks. They defaulted. They lost a car and 2 houses. And then they filed for bankruptcy. Because you can't file for bankruptcy until everything's gone. So the banks took the houses, took the car, like they sell the houses, the car, like the bank then sells those things to try to recover whatever money they can.
That must be why there's so many banks in Worthington.
I mean, there's a million banks all over everywhere. Like banks are just like crazy, like, and they're real fancy because they're making tons of money. We gotta cover a couple more things really quick, then I'll take more questions. So, hey, I will take more questions. I'd have to make sure we get through what we're supposed to get through. Exponents, and I think we know this, but exponents are telling you how many times to repeat the multiplication. So 4 to the 5th power is not 4 times 5. It's 4 times 4 times 4 times 4 times 4. There are 5 of them. We also call this the 5th power, or to the 5th, or some of them have other nicknames, like 5 to the 3rd. We call that cubed, because if we imagine this, what powers are actually doing? What powers are actually doing is saying 5 squared is if you had a square made of 5 by 5. Imagine this is a square, because now if we have a cube 5 by 5 by 5, that is 5 cubed, right? The volume is 5 times 5 times 5. So 5 cubed, well, what's 5 times 5?
25.
Times 5 more.
125.
But then flip those numbers around. What about 3 to the 5th? Well, what's 3 times 3?
9.
Times 3
27.
times 3.
Something.
81 times 3.
Oh,
What?
243.
243.
Just darn it, that's what I was going to do.
Now, here's why I had to get to this slide. Hang on to it for a second because I feel like you're not listening. When a fraction, you should write these 2 down. When a fraction, because this is where people make their mistakes, gets raised to a power, the common mistake is thinking only the numerator gets that power, and that is wrong. Both parts of the fraction get the power. So 2/3 to the 4th is 2 to the 4th over 3 to the 4th. So 2 to the 4th, 2 times 2 is 4, 8, 16. And 3 to the 4th, we just said, is 81. So that actually becomes 16 over 81. Just like that, a decimal raised to a power, we should really just make it a fraction.
Well, how do you do the decimal?
Well, it's
8
the same
tenths
thing.
is 8 tenths, or 0.8 times 0.8 times 0.8. So if we, in our calculator, do 0.8 times 0.8 times 0.8, we keep getting smaller, right? Because less than 1, less than 1, less than 1, we keep getting smaller. Or 8 cubed over 10 cubed. 64, what's 64 times 8?
Something.
512. Here's the cool thing about tens. Tens to a power just tell you how many zeros total. So 10 to the 3rd has 3 zeros total. It tells you how many zeros total. This all will lead us into doing scientific notation, which we'll get to tomorrow. Have a great day.
Wait, what would life be like?
900 maybe? 900 might be perfect. Or it's like 875.
What would life be like?
You just have to pay everything in cash.
About 1.
Oh, 850. 850. For those of you curious, 300 to 629 is bad. 630 to 689 is okay.
What about 1,000?
690 to 719 is good. 720 to 850 is excellent.
Choose those numbers.
has an excellent credit.
I
Everybody
do.
give him a round of
I
applause.
do have an excellent credit score.
What is your credit score?
Thank you, but it's really not that hard. Just pay back your debts. All right, leave. Get out of here. Go. No, you have to go. We're out of time. I could pull up my Chase account and tell you, but I'm not going to right now. It's like 800. It's like really close.
Does your credit score increase if you have
No, actually, it won't do anything. So to increase your credit score, you have to take on debt and pay it back. That's how you get a credit score. So the first thing you should do is open a bank account with a parent, because then you actually kind of like get benefits from their credit score.
Oh, I already know.
Yeah.
Like,
So
I just made a deposit to my Roth IRA of $750.
yeah. So that's like doing small stuff like that. Then getting one credit card, like one to start, and just use it for small stuff, pay it back every month. That's how you build up a good credit score. Now, actually, Alex, there is, don't take me on my word for that because you might want to research it. Some people say you want to let your balance roll for a month so that your balance has rolled and then pay it back. So you can see, like, so they can see you can manage debt that moves forward. Like, there's this whole weird, like, game. If you want to increase your credit score, there are tricks of how to do it. Yeah.
Credit Karma can tell you all of those.
Does that